My name is Nobungcwele Mbem, and I work as a project lead at the Economic Development Partnerships, and Futurecasting is one of the projects that I work on. So we are wanting to cultivate a dynamic platform for futures thinking and strategic dialogue, empowering communities, governments, and businesses to proactively and collaboratively prepare for an ever-changing future. So our next speaker is Alex McNamara, who is the head of operations at the National Business Initiative. So
I mean, obviously, I think Dudu has given a very localized perspective, and I think a very important one. We have obviously, as the National Business Initiative, have got a national view, but I think there's quite a lot of commonalities. I mean, I won't touch on our work in around how we think about the ecosystem part of all this. I'm really going to touch on a few fairly specific areas. But I think we have, I mean, I think as the NBI, we're developing a model around the JET that is quite significant and to the point around what is just. I mean, I think there certainly are strong, just elements to what we are doing. And in terms of our approach, I mean, essentially if I try and drill it down to the most essential pieces, how are we approaching this particular problem? The one is we are obviously trying to leverage where there are specific economic opportunities with a very strong focus at the moment on the clean energy value chain. So not so much necessarily clean energy per se, but the value chain associated with that, which I'll build on later, because that's where we think a lot of the economic inclusion opportunities will lie. And by economic inclusion, I mean opportunities for disadvantaged groups, small businesses, Black-owned businesses, the township economy to really be part of this future energy transition. Very important that we build off existing institutions and methods. So as NBI, we are strengthening our partnerships and institutions we currently work with. We don't actually want to create new institutions and methods necessarily. And a very, very strong focus on, as I mentioned, economic inclusion, but also this phrase of demand-led skilling. So I think it was raised before about there's this need for skills to have this transition, right? And also, if you want to be part of an economy and new market opportunities, you need the skills to enter into that market. So we have a strong track record in basically skilling people, not for the sake of training or skills development, but skilling people for employment. And that's what we mean by demand-led skilling. And there's a lot of opportunity in the green economy space that I'll talk to now. Another really significant part for us is if we're going to localize, so I mean, I guess this is less on the just part in a way, but if we're going to localize, we have to have a significant scaling of the renewable energy market. I've spoken to a number of investors who say, when it gets to a certain point, when your renewable energy installed capacity reaches a certain annual limit or annual threshold, I should say, it's just pure market economics that even your large international renewable energy companies will want to localize at least some portions of that renewable energy market. It just makes financial sense at that point. So our ability to scale renewable energy will lead to localization already, which of course has economic benefits for a wide variety of people. And then we look to how we make that more socially inclusive. The other part of this, I think, is also about innovation and accelerating innovation. And I'll talk through something we're doing on innovation. So that's broadly how we're approaching it. Starting with the sort of how do we skill young people and entrepreneurs for this new economy in particular in the just energy transition. I think we've got a very interesting model that we've developed, and it builds out of work we've done for over a decade in the skills arena. And it relies on technical skills training. So I should say the foundation is technical skills training, in particular, what we refer to as installation, repair, and maintenance, or IRM, which was something that was originally part of the Presidential Jobs Summit, but has now expanded with the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, and in fact now is part of our Just Energy Transition Investment Plan as a country. And the overriding premise of it is that if we want to bring young people, semi-skilled people, even unskilled people into the economy, where can we find opportunities for them? And one of them is in the technical skills arena. And so we know that there's if we think about a special economic zone, or we think about some kind of clean energy system, or either broad or the green economy as a whole, there is construction that takes place, there is maintenance that takes place, there is waste services that are required, and there, of course, there are opportunities for industrialization. In all of that, there are opportunities for technical skills across the entire value chain. I haven't included that slide in this presentation, but you can basically map out all the skills that technical people can fulfill, for example, in the clean energy value chain. And they're quite significant. So, and this is in fact work that we are going to be doing in a lot more depth in the coming months, working with the University of Cape Town to map out basically every single skill level and occupation in the clean energy value chain, so that we can find entry points for young people, for unemployed people. Youth unemployment is a very, very strong focus area of the NBI. And we were seeing the just energy transition as a critical means in order to address that. And we do it using technical training as our first entry point. But the technical training is not just technical training, it's also SME development. So a huge part of this is actually an entrepreneurship program as well. And then the question will be, well, how do we roll out this whole thing? Well, we've been doing it obviously for a number of years, but essentially we work primarily with the technical colleges across the country. A number of them, they're all over the place, including in Mpumalanga. And so basically building off what we have already in the technical college system, and then linking that to entrepreneurial programs and various other forms. So this slide is basically our sort of 10-year strategy, most of which is actually underway. We do a lot of training and a lot of placement of young people in different workplaces, and do a lot of SME support already, and have now got, I think, quite significant funding to really make this real. But again, to the point that I made in the first slide, we're doing it building off existing institutions, so existing TVET colleges, for example, and SEZs, which I'll discuss in a bit later. So in terms of trying to make this real, I mean, we're supporting startup businesses, we're supporting township-based enterprises, we're skilling young people for work, we're providing them with workplace opportunities in the green economy, and with a strong focus on the clean energy side. So for us, this is a viable model around the just energy transition. It's not the only model, but it certainly is a viable model. And it's also not just associated with training, skills development, entrepreneurship, but also infrastructure development. So we are in the process of rolling out what we call our IRM hubs, but they're basically training hubs, incubation hubs, where we support young people, we support entrepreneurs, and they are linked to existing facilities. So, for example, they'll be linked to an existing TVET college, or in the case of the Western Cape, they would be linked to the Atlantis Special Economic Zone, which is obviously geared to being a green manufacturing hub in Africa. So we are working with our long-standing partners. We have significant infrastructure investment going into those institutions to provide almost like a one-stop shop for a young entrepreneur or a young person to be trained, skilled, become an entrepreneur, and enter the clean energy value chain. And at the same time, of course, these centers are living labs. So there is a technology sort of practice and piloting process that occurs. And there are targets for local employment, local labor, in the construction, in the operation. So you basically use these entities as a way of bringing the township economy into the more mainstream economy, if I can put it that way. So yeah, we're in the process of rolling these out. The architectural drawings are basically finalized, and we will be doing full-scale infrastructure development in these sites, starting, if I'm not mistaken, with the Atlantis SEZ at the end of this year. So that's just to give you a sense of the model that we're applying. But that, of course, is just one program. It's one avenue using skills development, the TVET college system as a way to bring young people into this emerging opportunities, right? Because there are significant opportunities linked to renewable energy rollout. And as I say, it's not just about solar rooftops or putting solar on roofs. It's much more than that. It's about the minerals involved. It's about the manufacturing, the operations. It's about the sort of waste and recycling. So we're looking at upstream, downstream, at every single aspect of renewable energy. But part of that, of course, as I mentioned, is growing the market as a whole. And the more we do that, the drive to localize will just become a national, it will become something that just happens automatically in a sense. So for us, I mean, we've done a lot of work as the MBI looking at the economic and financial opportunity linked to renewable energy, the way in which it would support energy security, economic diversification, the way it could unlock electric vehicles, but also more specifically green hydrogen. And so we've, with our, with over sort of 30 CEO champions and sort of 400 hours of technical workshops with hundreds of experts across the country, have developed a number of pathways reports, which are very well known in the sector, but in many cases that really essentially identify how important renewable energy is to our future economic competitiveness, to achieving a net zero transition, but also really opening up new economic opportunities at quite a significant scale. So if you haven't looked at them, I think this is part of, I guess, the collateral to understanding that actually renewable energy is a low-cost opportunity. We have some of the best renewable energy resources in the world. This can be a significant part of our economic growth strategy in the future, and really has to be if we're going to protect exports and other areas. I mean, what we try to emphasize is that the costs of inaction or the costs of business as usual, our current business as usual trajectory economically, are very high. As the world shifts to a renewable energy and electric vehicle future. So that's some of the work we've done. We've also, there are other ways in which we can facilitate innovation in the renewable energy market, one of which is, you might have heard of, is the virtual wheeling framework, which was launched end of last year in a partnership with Eskom and Vodacom. You might have heard of the Vodacom pilot around virtual wheeling. These are the kinds of enablers which over time will allow smaller, medium-sized companies, other entities to really play a role in the renewable energy market. Again, this is about stimulating the supply and demand of the renewable sector to grow the economy and other related industries. And then just lastly, I mean, I don't think it would be, apart from the models that I presented, I think it's very important to understand that we have got the ability to innovate. There are emergent business models and businesses that if we can scale them, they will be local success stories and part of this local transition. And I'm very happy to say that we've been part of something called the Climate Finance Accelerator. It's funded by UK Pact. And we're at the situation now where out of the 10 initial countries globally where the CFA has been active, South Africa has been the most successful program of the CFA over the last 4 years. So I think it's something we can be very proud of. And to date, we've had about 1.8 billion, so almost 2 billion in investment in South African companies, fairly small scale, or in some cases sort of purged for growth, others ready to scale, companies that have now actively got investment linked to market and are doing very well. I don't want to go through the whole list of companies, but some of them, I promise you, if you were walking down the street, you would realize, okay, this is actually a CFA funded business. So, and many of them in the socially inclusive space as well. In fact, there's a very specific emphasis on gender equity and social inclusion within the parameters and criteria. And so we've seen that in some of the makeup of the projects. I mean, not all of them, but certainly a number of them. So for us, I think this kind of combination is the kind of models that will lead to not only economic growth and skills development, but should support localization and social inclusion going forward. Thank you.